Hello, I am Lena Spaho, founder of Inside the Walls blog and Inside the Walls and Beyond Facebook page. Today, I am joined by Jacqueline Ann Polverari. Jacqueline has an MBA and an MSW. She is currently obtaining her doctorate in social work. On January the 5th, 2015, Jacqueline self-surrendered to FPC Danbury. She was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day. Jacqueline is an advocate for prison reform. Please welcome Jacqueline to my show today. Hello.
Hi, Lynn. How are you?
Good. How are you? I'm so glad you joined me today. I'm excited because, we're talking about mental health and the impact of incarceration, and you're a social worker. So why don't you tell my listening audience some things about yourself?
Well, I surrendered in 2015, self-surrendered. I came home the end of 2015. And while I was incarcerated, it was shocking to me talking to women and what they were going to be facing when they came home and what prison actually did to them and the collateral damage, which is their families. Absolutely. So I decided while going for my doctorate that I would do more research. So I've been really researching on the sociology side of the mental health effects of prison, particularly on women. Yes. Seeing, the gender difference is huge in this field. So it's been a great eye-opening for me. And I think it's really important I love your show because it's important to educate the communities and educate the public on what really is prison and what it does, the trauma that happens.
Yeah. At a camp, I think we got shielded from a lot of the trauma that people have that are at higher level securities, because women I have talked to that served time at FCI and, USPs, they saw more violence than we did at the camp. However, I'm trying to distill this idea that there's a camp fed or a camp cupcake where, women go and play tennis and swim and just, eat steak and have a great time. And that's really just not it. I mean, you're thrust into an environment that is, very toxic, and the staff is not nice to you. And there's lots of, controlled environment and things that people, what can you tell my audience about your experience?
Well, I could give you a great example. I run a Wednesday night support group for women. And we talked a lot last night about the humiliation of prison. And we say prison camp, right? And everyone thinks Club Fud, you're going away, you're going to have this great time. When I was in Danbury, my son graduated college. And to keep my mind off it, we were doing this talent show thing. So now I'm going to join this talent show. And we did this, we're singing this number and stuff. But what I didn't realize was they utilized the women at the camp to come down and perform for the entire staff. There was about 200 people sitting with cake and beautiful tables set up, almost like a wedding. And here the women came in their uniforms in front of these correctional officers, the warden, the administrative staff, and we performed for them. And at the time, we didn't really think anything of it. We were happy to do that because we were out in public and we were reflecting back on it and how humiliating that is. And that was to do to women or to anybody, to perform like you would in a circus. And I think the public doesn't understand, yes, it is a camp. Yes, it is easier in some retrospect than an FCI or higher level. But the humiliation is the same. The identity that they strip from you is the same. You no longer have an opinion. You no longer you are property of the government. And that is the same no matter what prison you're in.
Right. Yes. You're owned by the BOP, and they do not let you forget that, even on this side of the walls while you're under, home confinement, halfway house, what have you. They definitely own you.
Yeah. And the mental health effect to it is, I remember being terrified of getting sick, because what also our communities and the public doesn't know, if you get sick and you're in custody of the BOP, they don't contact your family.
Nor do they give you good health care.
No.
They don't care.
But if you have major illness and you have to go to a hospital,
yes,
visiting day comes and your family's sitting there waiting to see you, and all they're told is, sorry, she's not coming to visiting today. They are not told you're sick. They're not told you're in the hospital. They cannot visit you in the hospital. And the mental health effects on your children is unbelievable. And the whole time, it's that hold that they have over you. And so many people say, you know, they can do whatever they want to your body, but they can't control your mind. And I disagree wholeheartedly with that. Yes, women could be very strong. Men could be very strong too. But when you enter those walls, you are diminished to break you. That is their, I wouldn't say that is their job, because there are many great correctional officers that try, but the bad ones oversee, you know, the good ones. So I think that there's an enjoyment in breaking you, especially at a white collar level, because
they love to make you know that you are an inmate. They love to use that term, you know, inmate this, inmate that. You know, your whole identity, like you said at the first of this video, has just been stripped.
Yeah,
you no longer have yourself.
Yeah, you're a number, you're a convict. We talked about language too. You're a convict, you're an inmate, you are a felon. It's not, you're a person who made some very bad choices in your life. And now you need to figure out how to move forward. It's a punishment. It's a system of punishment that doesn't work for anyone's mental health. It just doesn't work.
You know, I did not suffer from mental health issues prior to prison. I didn't have, you know, even though I went through 2 indictments, you know, jury trial, being found guilty of something I didn't do, so on and so forth, I did not have mental health issues. Even after all that, I had stress, but prison brought on the anxiety and the PTSD that I now have to deal with. Oh,
absolutely. If I hear somebody walking and their keys are jangling on the side of them, I start to get massive anxiety, because at 5 o'clock in the morning or at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can hear that, and that wakes you up. And I was one of the shovelers. So in Danbury, if it snowed, the women of the camp had to go shovel the snow, because we're on a property where there is a men's FCI and there's a women's FCI. And for our listeners, that's a higher level than a camp is. Yeah. So they can't just let them out. Right, exactly. And so the women that are there in that camp run the facility. They're the plumbers, the contractors, they're the electricians, they're the grounds, they're the snow shovelers. So I
same at FPC Prime where I was at. Yeah.
Yeah. So my job was to go down to the men's prison and shovel the front walkway every single time it snowed. And they would wake you up at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning to do this. And the keys that the correctional officers, and the pleasure that they had in waking you up, was the most detrimental part of it. Because
they shine a flashlight in your eyes. Yeah, they did that to us during count during the night. They made sure that flashlight, you know, disturbed your sleep.
Yeah, because they aren't allowed to touch you. So they have to do any other means. So because they're not allowed to touch you, they use the audible portion of everything that you're hearing to affect your mental health. And it really does. And look, I get that the public doesn't understand, because the stigma about women going to prison or men going to prison, even at a camp level, they deserve it. They're overprivileged. They're greedy.
Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. I mean, I hear it all.
Yeah, you know,
but we're locking up nonviolent first-time offenders in the most cases of a camp. Yeah. And what detriment to society, you know, to lock up nonviolent first time offenders that could be in their community if they're a drug addict getting help, or if they're, a white collar getting reform for whatever caused them to commit that crime. Because a lot of times, as we well know, that goes back to some kind of depression or anxiety or mental illness that's going on as well.
Oh, it absolutely does. Because I've interviewed 342 women
Wow.
who've all been to prison, all for, not all for white collar crime, because I work with any woman, but mostly for white collar crime. And every one of them have the same exact underlying mental health issues. They are people pleasers. They are perfectionists. They are low self-esteem. They're trying to prove themselves. And underneath it all, they're fixers. So if you talk to any of these white collar women, their crimes are because they're trying to fix a problem. And that was my situation. And you try and fix one problem and everybody knows you're trying to fix that. And you just fix it quickly and the other thing can wait. But then you have to fix the other thing. So then when you go to fix that, it becomes this big snowball effect that just blows up in your face. And, in my case, I should have been punished for what I did. I am not denying that at all. I was guilty. I took a mortgage out. I overstated my income on that mortgage, and I needed to go through some punishment. However, to take me away from my children in the most crucial time of their ages of teens, in high school going into college, and put me in a prison camp owing restitution was not a punishment to me. It was a punishment to my family. And in again, that snowball effect, now you have families falling apart because these women who've been fixing everything for years, instead of sending them to family therapy, community service, personal therapy, these things that could be so helpful to them, their family, and the communities.
Group peer therapy. You could have, there's so many things. And, I know you probably served time with a lot of people that their crime was being an addict. Okay. Let's face it. They got into trouble because they sold drugs to support their drug habit or lived with somebody they were getting the drugs from. That was a common theme I saw. So, what are we doing for them? We lock them up, but we're not giving them any help. So when they leave, they still have the addiction that caused them to get there. And I saw, just in the 27 months I actually saw several women come back that were addicts that just couldn't make it in the world because they couldn't stop the drugs. And it's a failure of the BOP and society as a whole that we have a system that is nothing but punitive, even though it's supposed to be part rehabilitative.
Oh, absolutely. Besides the fact that most white collar women go into prison, never have been addicted to anything. Now they're on Xanax, Klonopin, Ambien to sleep, and everything else they're taking beforehand because, I waited 6 years to get sentenced. 6 long years of the unknown fear of what's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And when you go into prison, they don't help you. I saw women detox like you could not believe because there's no services in place inside besides even outside. So the mental health part of it going in is just as bad as during, and then coming home, it's hit with another piece. You're not allowed to speak to another felon. Now you're coming home, you isolate yourself, you're humiliated, you're ashamed. There's no one that understands what you've been through except another felon, and you're not allowed to speak to them. And that is outrageous. That's another form of control of speech, it's that control piece that let's control these people, not help them. Because that's the one thing that helps anybody who has gone through this process to speak to somebody else who's gone through the process.
Right, because nobody in your family understands. They've not been in that environment and they can't envision it. And to be honest, I don't even think you would want them to, or would want to explain that all, or even could find the time and the day to explain everything, the process of what goes on at prison. So many things happen in a day, but they were all small things that may have added up to something big. But you get to talk, if you wanted to talk every day to your husband and you're getting 300 minutes a month, you don't have time to tell your family anything. You're trying to just find out how everybody's doing and, love you or whatever, you're trying to stay connected. So you can't ever make your family, like I said, nor would you probably want to make your family understand what you went through in there.
Yeah, no, you can't. And the thing about it is too, is you'll know this, when your family does visit, every week, my husband would come and visit on a Saturday and a Sunday, or one of the two if you run out of time. And every week he would have to leave me there.
Right.
And every week he would leave and come home and sit in the chair, and the entire day was destroyed for him. Now, okay, you want to say I deserve that. I also went to visiting, and the whole day I'd sit in my bed because your family leaves you there. My children.
My husband described it like someone died, only they didn't.
Exactly. Because you're getting to see them. But are you really, like, right? When you have visiting, my family would come, and you're so spacey, because there's a very big saying that I tell every client of mine is, you cannot live with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. This is going to be your new world for the period of time you're there. And you simply cannot live in both worlds. They're two different worlds. You cannot do it. So you have to put both feet inside and say, okay, this is where I'm going to be for next 7 months. Now, once a week, you bring the outside world in that you have no idea to even, how do you comprehend that? So you don't even know what they're saying. I don't even remember one visit with my husband or my children. And when you're sitting there, you're looking around in this room, you get no privacy. So you can't really talk to them, because 2 feet away is another couple having a fight or whatever the case is. So you really can't get intimate with your finances, or my kids were having problems. My girls were having problems with boys at that time. They're not going to sit there in a visiting room and tell me about it, because there's people sitting not even a couple inches apart from you.
And what about the trauma of what they go through just to get in there to the visiting room? Because, I know at Bryan, they had to empty their pockets. If you had on a certain kind of shoe or pants, they'd say you can't come in. And the rules were all over the map. Some people got in looking a certain way, others got turned away. It's like Russian roulette. They didn't follow what it said in their handbook. And it just, like if I accidentally turn my chair a little sideways towards my husband, no, the chair has to be straight. They come over there and tell you, you can't, your chair needs to be straight. So I'm supposed to sit here right beside him and have to look like this the whole day, which he's looking the opposite way. What's that doing to your neck? It's so uncomfortable. Again,
the bottom line is they push family reunification. Their goal, if you go on the BOP website, it's we are all about family reunification.
Yes.
Reunification. However, my 80-year-old mother, when she came to visit me, happened to have on sandals with a little open toe, and she couldn't come in because it was against their policy. Now I have to follow rules. I'm in trouble. I need to follow rules, and my rules are my rule. But come on, my 80-year-old mother doesn't even know how to follow rules on shoes. These are her walking comfort shoes. And all she knows is that she's turned away at the door and sees me and is crying hysterical because her daughter is in there and she can't visit. And so you're talking not even your children and your kids. Now you're talking.
And what about the trauma to her in that instance? What kind of trauma happened to your kids that couldn't talk to their mom in private? What kind of trauma happened to your mother who had a little peep toe shoe on and they said, nope, not coming in. And she has to see you through a glass door in there, but she can't get to you. What are we doing? My husband, one time, they said it was overcrowding. He drove 8 hours to see me. That's how far I was from home. And after 3 hours, they made him leave because they said it was overcrowding, even though that violated the BOP policy on visitation. But they didn't care. They made their own rule up that the first people that got there had to leave, even though their own policy said distance of travel, how many times a month you do get to visit, which he could only come every 4 to 6 weeks. We lived 8 hours. That's a big expense. He had to take off work. He had to drive 8 hours. He had to get a hotel for 2 nights. I mean, that's a huge expense to see somebody all day Saturday and a couple of hours on Sunday. And that's what we did for 24 months
Yeah,
of me
and you
being
know
at
what the funny
Bryan.
thing is? I think a lot of that is too, that rules can be made up as they go along. So now I had that same exact instance. However, I live in Connecticut. Danbury's in Connecticut. My family, I was very fortunate to have my family visit every day. We had a woman I got to be very close with. She lived in Maine. Her family could visit only once in a while because it was a 7-hour trip like you. Now, I was sitting in the visiting room with my husband. Her family came in. After 25 minutes, they were told to leave because it was too crowded. So I was across the room. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. I stood up. I said to the guard, my family will leave because no, my family comes all the time. I was denied that. I was told to be quiet. I'm an inmate, sit down. They make the decisions.
Yeah,
And
my
I was,
husband, in that instance, he showed them the overcrowdedness was in the family section. In the section we were in that was for two people, like, just a husband and wife, there was 8 other chairs available.
yeah.
So there wasn't even an overcrowding in that section. He went up, nicely talked to the guard. They told him basically, nope, this is how we're doing it.
Yeah, but think about what they created.
Crazy.
When they did that, not only did they create trauma for your family, but now there's inside trauma between the inmates. Because when I came out of visiting, I had 3 women come up to me screaming at me because I can't believe you didn't leave visiting for. So there was a lot of creation of, let's not let these women get too close, because if they get too close, there's a little camaraderie there. You can't let that happen. So let's create some drama. And it was like a game. Let's watch the inmates fight. And
or they will tell you what one inmate says on a phone call. They would do this at Bryan. I never was part of it, but I know inmates that were told, like, maybe somebody had a girlfriend or something. Well, then the staff would go say, oh, did you know she was talking to whatever, or she was up at visitation with her husband, or, whatever, and try to start a lot of drama that way amongst, like you said, inmates. They enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And not only that, is think about when I was ready to go home, they purposely put a list up outside the secretaries. In Danbury is a long hallway, and all you do, you live in the basement of that hallway. That's it. It's a long hallway. Downstairs are cubicles. You live in the basement. The secretary's office was in this long hallway. Whenever 30 days prior to when an inmate, convict, felon leaves, camper, whatever you want to call it, when they leave, they post a list up of all the women that are leaving, creating this jealousy that, oh, wow, they're leaving. Well, let's start with this person, because if you get into an altercation 30 days prior to leaving, guess what? You ain't going anywhere. If you get into an altercation 30 days prior, or if you get hurt, if you get hurt before you leave, you aren't going anywhere because you're still property of the government.
Medical hold.
Yeah, when you leave, they put you on medical hold. I'm not quite sure. And I asked the secretary, why do you put that up? Well, we have to let people know they're leaving.
Who are we letting know? I mean, people don't know they're leaving.
Yeah.
Come on, if you're leaving, you know it. Believe me. They did that also at Bryan. They would have a list of people that were leaving, but it wasn't in a where you walk by it every day. It was over at I think the case manager had a list. But yeah, I could see where that would be a big problem where you were at. So let's move to barriers to reentry. I know you and I both had great situations to come home to with a house, a husband, vehicle, connections to hopefully get work, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's not the norm. I know you work with a lot of women. What kind of barriers have you been seeing?
Well, I think the biggest barrier right now is, and what the communities and public don't understand, is when you are a felon, you are a felon for life. There is no one except the President of the United States who could say otherwise. So you come home and you think, oh, this chapter of my life is behind me. I'm going to move forward. And I've gotten a lot. Oh, you talk so much about prison. You're so, well, I'm transparent about my situation. I'm transparent about who I am. I've embraced it because guess what? You Google my name, I'm not getting a job. I can't, if I didn't have a home, I would not get housing, a rent,
No,
credit
felon would prevent
card.
you from renting.
Yeah. And these women, I have 2 women now that are moving from Airbnb to Airbnb, praying that these owners don't, and they can't find a rent because they have a background check and they're good people who've rebuilt their lives and they just can't find a rent or a job. They can't get a job.
Yeah.
And
It's
second
sad.
chance
And the BOP doesn't teach people that don't have job skills. They don't teach them those anyway. So unless you had them prior to going in, you're just SOL. I mean, you're not going to have them. And so you come back out, women do, with the same, not only the stigmatism of the felony now to go on top of the fact they had no skills and they did not get any while they were residing behind those walls.
Yeah. And quite frankly, it's a simple fix. And
Yeah.
so I don't really blame the correctional officers. I don't blame the administrative staff. I blame the BOP in general, the people that are making policies that aren't following those policies.
Right.
Because home confinement, now COVID happened. It's a great testament to this. COVID happened. A lot of people from camps were sent to home confinement based on the CARES Act.
Yes.
So now they're testing the waters.
I'm one of them.
Right. Home confinement is no easy thing. People say, oh, home confinement, you get to live in your house. Guess what? Home confinement's not easy. You have the halfway house calling you all through the night. They're driving by your house. You have to call when you get to work. You have to call when you leave. They call your employer. So your employer is consistently being, bothered by phone calls from probation or the halfway house. But have any of these women, I'd love to look at the statistics, and that is what I'm researching right now. What are the statistics of these women reoffending on home confinement? They don't reoffend. And right now, as we were speaking of, the big, huge thing on mental health is huge, because they're saying, well, if anybody who has more than a year left to their sentence, they may send them back because COVID is now opening up. Well, wait, you're going to transition people to home. And it's not about being home. It's about the transition from the start to the finish. You're transitioning to a plea agreement. You're transitioning to a sentencing. You're transitioning to prison. Now you're transitioning to halfway house. You're then transitioning to home confinement, then to probation. Each transitions creates trauma. And that trauma is everlasting because there's very few therapists, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists that have been through the system, that even know how, that even understand the trauma. There needs to be changes. There needs to be policy and it starts with education. The public needs to be aware of the break in policies, the lack of empathy, and the lack of second chances. And that has to happen because inmates can't change it. And coming home from prison, my philosophy is I help one woman at a time, because I can't help, I can't change policy. The public needs to know what is going on. And that's what I do. I try and educate the public and communities about the realities of prison and a prison camp, because the stigma is wrong.
It is. And, if you owe restitution, that's a permanent stigmatism, because you can never get past that. So you've always got somebody, be it, the PO or halfway house, or, then you move on to the FLU, which is the financial litigation unit. So if you owe restitution, your whole life the rest of your life is a sentence. And you shouldn't have to serve time and do that too. There's just something wrong with our system when we're putting multiple punishments on someone for one mistake. It's ridiculous. But I think the thing.
Think about it too, not to interrupt you, but this is really important on restitution. How many people have their restitution and it's actually correct?
Right.
With the fines, the fees, the added expense. It's not even
interest. Some people have interest on huge amounts. I mean, their interest is going to be more than their restitution before long. I mean, how would they expect anybody to ever get out from under that? Yeah. Because they don't.
You can't. You absolutely can't. And it's interesting. I'm actually quoted in a couple books called It's a book called Trusted White Collar. You got to get it, Lynn. Trusted White Collar Felons. It's an author that studies the Norwegian prison system, and he did a global study on Norway versus the United States.
Yeah.
And the United States has the worst prison system in the world. Besides,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, Singapore, you know what I mean? And it's shocking how amazing other countries are moving towards helping with mental health. And the United States of America, we're still imprisoning more people than anywhere in the world per capita. It's insane.
Exactly. It is. Over incarceration is another issue. And again, that is what creates a lot of the impact on people's mental health is the over incarceration. And, that becomes a circular generational issue. Mm-hmm. The statistics are out there, and I can't quote them. I should have got them. If I'd have known I was going to say this, I would have. But there is statistics out there about the generational incarceration, where somebody's dad or mom is incarcerated. The next thing you know, they're incarcerated because they grew up in that trauma, in that environment, seeing that. That's their way of life now. And then they have kids, and it's just a vicious, long-term generational circle of multi-generations being locked up. And it's really unfortunate that we don't have a better system, and that society's not looking at this in a different way.
They're really not.
As mental health professionals, I just recently received my master's in clinical and mental health counseling.
Congratulations.
And I know you have your master's, thank you, in social work. And I feel like it really is our duty, so to speak, because we did serve time, and yet we are mental health professionals. Who better to speak out on these issues than people that have not only experienced it on a personal level, but also have a professional understanding of it. And so these videos, I feel like that it's my duty to do these, to make the public aware. And so I really...
I wholeheartedly agree. And you know what? Too few women come forward. And what really frustrates me, and I can call out people by name because it's public information. I self-surrendered with Teresa Giudice. And the whole time she was in prison, she said, I'm going to get out and help women. I'm going to get out and help women. She got out, she wrote this book. She put pictures of women in uniform in her book and made millions from this book, and has not helped one woman or one man that has gone through the criminal justice system with any kind of mental health and anything. And so many people do that. They go through the system. I'm going to help. They get home and they don't show up. So I really hold issue with that. And I think that's one of the reasons too, because I was one of those women throughout the whole time. This is not right. I got to help. So I really feel that I need to keep my word to that as someone who has changed.
I had a lady I served time with at Bryan reach out to me the other night telling me how proud she was of me for doing these podcast videos. And, we talked about the fact that when I was behind those walls, I promised women, I made promises that I was going to be a voice. I was not going to run home and hide behind this. And, I'm keeping my promise to those women, and, and to anybody I meet in the future, for that matter, that's going through it. People find my blog, my podcast all the time, and they reach out, and I do try to help them, because I feel like, we've been down that road. We know not only are you going to make it through it, but we also know the pitfalls along the way, and what it feels like to be sitting there with that held over your head waiting to self-surrender. That's why when women reach out to me and tell me they're stressed or whatever because they're waiting for that day, I try to explain to them, yes, I remember, because it's almost like waiting for it is way worse than the day you go. Like once you go, it's like almost like a sigh of relief, like, okay, I'm here. It's not as,
the unknown is terrifying.
And it's mentally challenging.
It is 6 years I waited for that unknown. And
my case went on from 2011, and I finally went to prison in 2018.
Yeah, the same as me. During the mortgage crisis is when I committed a crime. That was 2009, and I went to prison 2015. And it is now 2021, and I'm still living it. And I'm not living it because I want to be transparent. I'm living it because if you Google me, guess what? I have to be transparent, because all you're going to find is inaccurate information. There's things that say I was a realtor. I was never a realtor. There's articles that say I was a mortgage broker. I was never a mortgage broker. So, my thing is embrace it, be who you are, try and make some change to do a little good in the world. And I was never perfect. I don't claim to be. I never will be, but I try. I get up every day and I try and be kind and make a difference. And you are doing an amazing job.
What are your parting words to my listening audience? If you have some words of wisdom, now's your time to tell us.
I would say when you listen to this, pass it on to someone else in the community to also listen to this. And before you hold judgment and before you put that stigma on anyone coming home from prison, realize one thing: 8 out of 10 people commit a felony every day without even knowing it.
Yeah. And not everybody gets caught. So, well, thank you so much for coming on today to talk to us. I really enjoy the podcast you do. I really enjoy, talking to you. Tell my listening audience, if they want to get a hold of you, how do they do so?
You can email me at evolutionreentry@gmail.com. You can go on my website, evolutionreentry.com. And I have a pretty big website that has a lot of women stories, blogs, emails from women there. And I have a podcast called Criminal Justice Cafe that Lynn was on, actually one of my first guests. You were fantastic. That's how we met.
Thank you.
And you can watch that anytime.
Well, thank you so much for having this chat with me today. And, we'll do some more in the future, because I think this is a subject we can never talk enough about or explain enough, because there's all the time new things coming, into play. So I will definitely be having you back on to talk about this again. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Lynn. And I'll talk to you soon.